Hello everyone, how are you going? And welcome to Top 10 Places to Visit in Jasper National Park. Now look, I don't know mounds about Jasper, but I do know that it's one and the same with Banff, and so together they make a pretty darn incredible landscape.
What is going on, guys? Today we are going to be going over the best places to visit in Jasper National Park in Alberta, Canada. This is one of the most amazing places in the Canadian Rockies. There's so much to see. It's a super family-friendly park to visit, and it's definitely a must-visit if you're going to be in this area. So let's dive right into my top 10 places to visit in Jasper National Park. First up is one of my favorite places in the Canadian Rockies, and this is Edith Cavell Glacier. And if you're going to look for this hike on All Trails 4 Directions, it'll show up as Path of the Glacier Trail on All Trails, and it is 1.1 mile round trip with 275 feet of elevation gain. Mount Edith Cavell is literally a tower in the sky. It feels like it's miles above the water. It's such a powerful mountain, and it actually tops out at 11,034 feet.
Wow, but that is certainly one to be starting off with, especially because, like you said, it is just an absolute tower. It is right there in front of this entire glacier, and I don't really know where the glacier is forming because, well, then he showed the next shot, is it? And you can see how kind of chopped off it is, but then where's all of that ice coming from? Is it coming from up on the left here, or... No, because it can't be coming out of the rock. I just really don't know how it's pushed all of that down but not actually fallen in yet. And really, just looking at those glaciers, even though I'm sure that they've retreated a whole bundle, they're just still so beautiful. Just seeing the marbled effect of all the different years and eons of time that those things have seen. I mean, I guess it isn't as old as the rock behind it, but for goodness sake, it is virtually the same thing, just looking at history right here. And to be honest, I'm actually quite surprised with how short he said this walk was. I believe he said it was about a 2 kilometer, maybe even round trip. If it's a 2 kilometer round trip, that is a pretty short walk, only 1 kilometer from the car park, which means that you're going to be driving a pretty long way up the mountain to begin with.
Please just remember to leave no trace when you're visiting these places so we can enjoy these places for decades and decades to come. Next up is going to be Sunwapta Falls, and if you would like to do this entire trail, it is 2 miles with 469 feet of elevation gain, and this is kind of just if you want to make this into a proper outing, but if you just want to see the waterfall, it is right next to the parking lot, so you're only going to be walking a few hundred feet if you want. There is a beautiful waterfall and a huge big canyon to walk along, and that's where you can find the lower Sunwapta Falls. This is definitely a super iconic waterfall in Jasper National Park.
Yeah, right. Why is that? Well, like I said, it certainly is not one of Canada's biggest waterfalls. They definitely have others that take the cake in that regard, but this one is a little bit unique in terms of how it has 2 feeds, and it's kind of made its own island, I can only assume. Coming back to this one, you can very clearly see that it just splits off beautifully, and so I wonder why, over the thousands and thousands of years, did it end up deciding to do that, and has it always been that way, or does it even flood and go above it? There are so many questions, but that is pretty unique, and so nothing else, I can certainly understand why it is going to be one of the most popular ones, because it is also so accessible. You know, you don't have to do the 2 mile or the 2K or the 5K or however long some of these treks are going to be. No, you can walk apparently a couple of hundred feet, which really isn't very far from the car park, and go, this is a very quaint little waterfall with just incredible views of the hills and everything else around you. Why would you not? And I mean, yeah, you have the incredible mountains, but you also have these incredible gullies, and I'm just wondering, have they been carved by the water over the thousands of years, or were they already kind of there and then the water just made them deeper? That would be my major question, because you can just see the eons again, the different colors in the rock, even the trees that are just living on the side of eternity basically right there. It is pretty darn incredible. What a beautiful kind of color as well. I love glacial color. Also, I just wanted to come back to these mountains right here because I'm just blown away about how kind of smooth they are. There's such a plate in the earth, almost like the tectonic plate itself, instead of just building up and just bashing itself together, has just flipped on its end. Like, it's so smooth. I don't get it. There's no undulations, there's no real cliff faces. It's just a perfect 30 degrees, as though someone's punched a bit of plywood. I don't get it.
Next up is going to be the Spirit Island Ferry, and this is probably the most famous and well-known spot in Jasper National Park. There's 2 ways to get to Spirit Island: the classic boat cruise ferry or a super gnarly kayaking trip. The ferry is open from May or early June and runs until the first week of October. If you do want to kayak to Spirit Island, it's going to be a huge 17-mile round trip day. Some people will do this as a multi-day kayak trip. However, you're going to need permits for that, and the campsites go super quick, so you need to plan that well in advance. And the regular boat tour that we did is would cost between 60 and 100 USD per person.
Wow, not cheap. Alright then, that is certainly not cheap, and that is a hell of a view again, but we're not onto you just yet, pyramid whatever you were. I mean, to be fair, looking around here, kind of like I was mentioning with the other mountains, there was just pyramids galore, and even just some of these first shots, where were they? Come on, show me, like these mountains in the background, look at that, like, Australia just doesn't really have anything like that. And look, every single country's going to have its own little nuance thing within reason, but really just look at that. I mean, the closest we get is just going and hopping over to New Zealand. To be fair, they definitely do it pretty darn well, but they just don't have the kind of expanses of land that Canada does. I mean, honestly, all of Jasper and Banff and all that kind of area, it's probably pretty much the same size as New Zealand in its entirety. You know, if we go all the way from the bottom all the way up to kind of the end of the mountainous areas, it's going to be 670 kilometers. But if we just kind of do Banff and Jasper National Park, it is going to be, look at that, only 100-ish, if you want to call it that, kilometers difference. And so yeah, that's an entire South Island right there. But hey, I guess in saying that, Canada certainly doesn't shy away from showing its size. For goodness sake, doing a 17-mile canoe trip, that is going to take you a while, and I guess I can certainly understand why some people take days to do it, just taking in the scenery for one and not just feeling like you just have to paddle for the sake of paddling. I mean, I guess one good thing with that is that you're not going to be getting particularly cold, especially compared to taking the boat trip. You know, if there's a little bit of a breeze and you're paddling into the wind compared to just freezing on the top deck just trying to take in all the sights, it's going to be a bit of a difference there. But I guess actually on the other hand, if you do go the kayak route, then there is the chance that you're going to be getting the glacier water just streaming down the paddle just straight onto your wrists, up your sleeve, obviously on your hands. And so considering the kind of temperatures that you're going to be dealing with, even if you're going between May and October, being summer up there in that kind of weather, I just don't really see that landscape ever being considered warm.
Next up is going to be Pyramid Island and Pyramid Lake. This is a super short and scenic 0.4 mile trip with 32 feet of elevation gain, beautiful lake, and you have surrounding views of the Canadian Rockies around you, which is awesome. We're actually here during fall foliage, so we got a ton of awesome bright yellow aspens and larches. I also definitely recommend stopping at the Pyramid Lake Resort. This is an awesome hangout area. There's tons of chairs, picnic tables. You can walk out onto the pier.
Mountain range. Honestly, just looking at this, I truly can see why Banff and Jasper and this entire area is just Canada's pride and joy. I mean, like I said, just look at the kind of just everything about that. I can really just see why it's called pyramid, for goodness sake. But just the color, there's red, there's green, there's the gray, there's almost a sandy color as well. And that is only what the mountain is giving us, let alone the fact that, like you said, when they're in autumn, and so you're getting all of those incredible spectrum of colors, from the greeny yellows to the true yellows to the orange yellows to the orange to the red. I mean, I guess sadly this one doesn't have the pristine glacier water that some of the other ones do. I mean, it's still going to be pretty darn pristine, I can only imagine, but just not that color. That color just absolutely pops. It's honestly amazing. I mean, even just taking the labels off this, for goodness sake, if we zoom into this one, we can see that, well, the ocean doesn't look like that, for goodness sake, and that is for a very good reason. You can just see this incredible color. It just pops. I mean, is there anywhere else that is just going to be big? I mean, that's another one in there. You just zoom in and that might be frozen over. That looks as though it could be frozen over. But honestly, just all of this glacial runoff water was just such a different color. I mean, I first remember looking at it in New Zealand, and you just go, oh my goodness, what am I looking at? Like, you can just look at this. How is that color? But that's just the runoff. Look at this one. That is just water. That doesn't look like water. It looks like glass, like frosted glass, and that's basically what it is. I mean, for goodness sake, it took me about 20 minutes to find it, but this is the panorama that I was able to take when I was at that exact location. And look, like I was saying, those colors do not lie. We can just see the kind of color in this water. It doesn't look like water that we've ever seen. Honestly, if you walked up to that, you probably wouldn't want to drink it in terms of just looking at it, but you go, that is some of the most pristine water in the world. I mean, it does have extra kind of lime, I believe it was, or something like that, and that's what helps give it its color. But for goodness sake, you're going to see the color of this in the icebergs as well. There was actually a sign that was saying it was even just in the 70s, maybe even the 90s, like pretty darn recent in the grand scheme of things, that this glacier that is all the way back in the distance was actually all the way up here. It has retreated over a kilometer in the last decade or something like that.
Next up, number 5 is Moline Canyon. This is a beautiful canyon hike that will take you across a handful of crazy waterfalls and beautiful views the entire way. There are 5 scenic bridges, and this is an awesome afternoon activity. If you have 2 cars, you can park one at each end of the canyon. Otherwise, you'll have to do the full out and back hike, which is 2.7 miles and 465 feet of elevation gain, and that's round trip. So if you have a car at each trailhead, you can cut that in half, and you can either choose to do the way where you go down, or you can do the way where you have a bunch of elevation gain. But this is a beautiful, beautiful day hike.
Yeah. Look at that. Honestly, just the water in some of these places, I just love it. It's so pristine. this one in particular was just absolutely ridiculous. Honestly, it looks like that entire thing has been filled with acrylic or glass or something like that when you get those multi-layered pieces of artwork, but just that right there is just water showcasing and almost magnifying the rock underneath it. And I mean, look, he was talking a lot about having the possibility of 2 cars and just parking one at either end and just chopping the journey in half, but really, why would you possibly want to? Because that just means you can just always face right going in and out and just have the full experience, just get to see everything, especially go, oh, I'd never even looked at that because I was looking over there. But then now I get to see that as well. It's just like everywhere you look, you would never have enough time to just experience everything going once, just blitzing through it. Nope, I'm going from here to there, from car to car, instead of going for the journey. In saying that though, of just being able to chop the journey in half and just being able to go, okay, I'm just going to do the downhill, or I guess if you're really keen, just going to do the uphill. Either way, if it just gets people out of their houses and enjoying these places, hopefully not trashing them, but just enjoying them, then that has to be a positive. Just people experiencing true nature.
Next up is going to be Athabasca Falls, and this is another awesome and famous waterfall. It's just 0.6 miles with 82 feet of elevation gain. There's tons of walkways, so you can move all around the waterfall and get a handful of different vantage points. Athabasca Falls is backdropped by Mount Kirkisland, and the waterfall runs right through the Athabasca River just off of the Fields Parkway. It's definitely a must visit while you're in Jasper, and what I really like about this waterfall is that the walkways give you so many different vantage points, so many different unique views, and just an awesome way to move around and kind of see this waterfall.
I actually think that that is a very hard balancing game to be playing correctly, but Canada certainly seems to be doing it right, just to be going, okay, we want to be able to allow people to go here and they need to be safe here, and we don't just want to send them out into the wilderness, but not just overdoing it to the point where it's just some built up area where people go, oh yeah, just got concrete footpaths and all these things all over the place where you've cleared just half the forest just to be able to get to one waterfall. No, it just has to kind of preserve the original feel, and that's a very difficult thing to do, especially when this one was only 0.6 of a mile, like 1k, while still just managing to have all of these bridges and overpasses and just little outlook areas. I mean, for goodness sake, just trying to just backdrop the entire thing in the mountain, that is no easy task. And so I have to give Canada and whoever is designing these things, be it the National Park Service or whatever it is, there is a lot of planning that goes into just not decimating the land.
Next up is just going to be kind of a generalized stop and thing to do, and this is the Fields Parkway. For most people, if you're going to be going to Jasper, you're going to be driving there via the Fields Parkway from Banff. This is the highway that connects Jasper National Park and Banff National Park. It's one of the most scenic drives I have ever done in my life. The parkway is 142 miles of mountains, non-stop views the entire way, and is incredible. Quick note, make sure you fill up on gas because I think there's only one gas station the entire way, and it is like double the price that it should be. For good reason, it's super out there, but definitely fill up your tank beforehand. Also, I would recommend waking up early if you're doing the drive because you're going to want to stop a million times, and if you're lucky, you'll probably see a bunch of wildlife and even some bears.
Oh, there is seriously no disputing the fact that this has to be one of the most scenic drives you could possibly go on, especially just going in autumn, just getting all of these colors. I mean, I would love to see it just a little bit further, I can only assume in autumn, just getting that orange coming out as well. But honestly, there is still going to be plenty to keep your eyes busy, for goodness sake. Just going from Jasper to Banff or Banff to Jasper, either way, as we already very clearly saw, it is certainly not a short drive. And so when you then just go ahead and add these guys in there as well, no wonder he's just asking you to get up at the crack of dawn just to be able to see the entire thing.
Number 8 is going to be Athabasca Glacier, and this is pretty much at the entrance to Jasper National Park. It is a 0.9 mile hike with 200 feet of elevation gain. You will be surrounded by glaciers here, but you can hike right up to Athabasca Glacier, and you can do the hike, you can take a bus tour onto the glacier, or you can even do some glacier travel with crampons and ice axes if you want to book that adventurous tour. While this glacier is one of the most beautiful stops here, it's also pretty heartbreaking because they have signs along the way showing the receding of the glacier over the last few hundred years. It is a very enlightening hike, and I highly recommend reading all of the signs along the way to learn more, and it's kind of just a wake-up call to see what the warming of our planet is doing in real time.
Okay, when he said you can take a bus on the glacier, I knew what he said, but then I just didn't believe that I was hearing what he actually said. Going a bus on the glacier, I did not think that was going to be possible, but I guess it's possible. Jeez, that is a hell of a thing to be doing. You better be trusting that it's floating and just on the rock, alright? I mean, I also feel as though it is a little bit weird. I mean, I don't know if you call it hypocritical, but to be taking a bus tour and be capitalizing on that aspect of it, but then also just putting signs out showing its recession, like, I don't know, it feels as though you're playing at both sides of the coin right there. But I mean, like I was saying, this was exactly the same story in New Zealand. I mean, they didn't go as far to put the markers down at each year or each interval, but they certainly just put up a sign that showed the very drastic recession of the entire glacier. And I mean, look, if we truly do want to see what has happened, I've just come onto Google Earth Engine, which is basically just Google Earth as a time lapse just over every single interval they have from 1984. So it's a little bit hard to tell because it is so washed out. But when I searched it, it came up as this guy in particular. So let's just see if we play it. Let's just see what we can see here, and does it retreat before our very eyes? Yes, it does. Oh, look at that. You're going to see it like a worm just retreating. I mean, I guess you really do get to see it when you just go from 1984 to 2020. Look at that. That is outrageous. And then you play it, and like I said, you just get that worm that just slithers back all the way up the mountain. Oh.
Number 9 is going to be Moline Lake, and this is the most famous lake in Jasper. It is the lake that Spear Island is on, and it is worth hanging out for the day regardless of if you do the Spear Island tour or not. It's famous for its watercolor, all of the peaks surrounding it, and the 3 glaciers that you can see from the lake. Wow. Moline Lake is 22 kilometers long, and surprisingly, it does actually freeze in the winter. It is the largest natural lake in the Canadian Rockies. And there's also a super, super dank waffle spot at the base of the lake, which I highly recommend checking out.
Oh, God. Gotta get all the tips, I guess.
Number 10 is Medicine Lake, and this is
No, you can't just be continuing off that one. That ending shot was outrageous. Once again, I mean, this one's a little bit more, like I said, I don't understand how those other mountains were so smooth. This one's a little bit more up, down, left, right, more like a staircase, but that shot is unreal. Look at it. It is an absolutely unreal place, and honestly, I can understand why it is so popular. I think to the point where I've seen either videos or images or something like that before of this basically exact shot, and I think the more I watch this video, the more I'm realizing that I just love the contrast between just the brutal rock up the top where it's just rock and a little bit of snow if you're lucky at this kind of time of the year, but just because the trees go, no, we are not stepping another foot up this mountain. We know our limits, we know how far we can go up, whether it's just too eroded, too cold, too wet, or too dry, whatever it may be. Like I said, it just juxtaposes itself so well between the harsh rock and the soft trees, and even the water right there. It just shows you true untouched nature at its best.
Number 10 is Medicine Lake, and this is an awesome stop that's pretty close to the town of Jasper, and it's on the way to Moline Lake. You're going to be driving alongside it the entire way. There's a handful of stops that you should definitely park at and enjoy. The lake is very interesting and dynamic. You're going to find dead burned trees from forest fires, vibrant fall colors, river deltas, very deep, beautiful watercolor, and sinkholes in the lake. This lake kind of has it all, and the history behind the sinkholes is super interesting. So you might see some of the lake dried up when you visit, and that is because of this.
Because of the sinkholes? Are they really taking all the water? I can only imagine not, because that water then becomes groundwater. Then where is it going to go? I mean, I guess they're elevated, but no, surely not. But the thing that caught my eye first was just the trees, and I was going, they look as though they've been burnt, but I don't understand why they'd be burnt, and so maybe they're just deciduous in that way. But no, forest fires up in that way. I mean, wonder why. Are they arson? Hopefully not. Are they otherwise lightning, or what is just being able to just set this entire forest on fire? Because I can only imagine there is so much water up in these areas. They're not dried out. It's not like Australia in that regard, especially as we can very clearly see the green tree line compared to the burnt tree line, and so that means it's only around the lake. And so I really am quite confused and wondering how recent are those forest fires compared to when he was there. Either way, so many questions, so many beautiful spots, and incredible video making. Just so much beautiful b-roll. I gotta give him that. I mean, for goodness sake, this is only in Jasper and kind of down to Banff as well, and so it's not even that big of a pocket of area that you have to be able to cover. It's not flying from one side of Canada to the other. No, all of these areas are just there, and so just do a mega road trip if you need to, and maybe a bit of a kayak trip if you need to, or a boat trip, whatever it may be. Just experience all these things if you can. But anyway, in saying that, I reckon I'm just finally going to call it there. So thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to do the algorithmic things down below. Also, if this is the first video of mine that you're watching, then make sure to go check out my other ones. Also, make sure to go check out the original video down in the description below. Or hey, maybe even just want to consider subscribing so that you don't miss another one of these in the future. But all in all, have a good one and see ya.